Ever since I bought my house, I have had a dream of harvesting from my own garden for dinner and family gatherings. I started with a small mass-produced raised garden bed built with cedar, that's about 2 by 8 feet. I placed the bed adjacent to my backyard deck so that I can easily pick the vegetables as I prepare meals for the family. I planted Korean cucumbers, lettuce, sesame leaves, and peppers as a start. My desire to grow more produce quickly grew beyond the size of this bed in less than a year. In the following year, I decided to build 2 raised garden beds by sacrificing my car lift raft that was made with 2 by 6 and 2 by 8 lumbers. I used to love maintaining my cars at home but began to favor home improvement chores more, so I decided to reset my priorities. As you can see, the length of these beds in reference to the fence in the rear, these are pretty big garden beds. They are 2 by 12 feet beds. On the left, I had zucchini, cucumbers, and varying kinds of peppers. On the right, half of the bed was planted with 2 different kinds of lettuce and the remaining half was planted with sesame leaves. Yeah, my family loves lettuce and sesame leaves, especially when we eat Korean galbi and samgyeopsal. Over the course of several years, the wood got rotten thanks to blossoming nutrition added to the bed. This certainly attracted some wood-eating bugs. On top of that, we added a vinyl top over the soil to ensure the hydration of the crops during a hot summer, and the rotting only got accelerated while the crops were more fruitful. So, I began to think of a new bed solution that can hinder wood rotting problems. I noticed that Amazon sold varying steel tanks with bottom openings. I liked the concept but preferred a wood frame for aesthetic reasons. So, here's what I did as a result. I first uprooted the shrubs in front of the fence to make some space. I wanted to go back to my original idea where I can easily pick out my crops seamlessly near the kitchen, in which is adjacent to the den and deck. Unfortunately, the space in between the fence and the deck was just slightly narrower than what I preferred, so I shortened the deck by several inches with a circular saw and recovered the bottom of the deck with vinyl trellis. I used 16-gauge nail gun to stabilize them. This gave me just enough space to design my new garden beds. Unlike the last garden beds, where I had 2 separate units with 2 partitions on each, this time I decided to go with one giant garden bed with 3 partitions instead to give a smooth and connected design alongside the deck. I built this bed with only 3 predominant materials: 2 by 4 lumbers, 4 by 4 lumbers, and corrugated galvanized steel sheets. I had to first rake the ground to level as much as possible. Unfortunately, it was a descending ground, so I ended up leveling in 3 large stair steps and made 3 foundational frames that's highly resilient from rotting, using 4 by 4 lumbers. This way, the 2 by 4 bed frames that will be sitting on top of the frame won't touch the ground and last longer. Luckily, I already had a sprinkler system in place for the shrubs I uprooted, so I simply added necessary piping and routed the 3 water lines under the foundational frames. As a next step, I built the bed frames out of 2 by 4 lumbers for each partition and connected them with deck screws. As a final step, I cut the corrugated steel sheets into the appropriate sizes and nailed them to all inner sidings. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention about how I added the watering line. Under the bed, from the sprinkler outlet, I connected an underground flexible sprinkler hose. I then routed the hose to a corner of each partition and began the final extension with PVC pipes that route the entire bed from on the top layer of the bed. I further added an independent ball valves on each partition so that I can easily control the flow of the water or even shut the water down on any particular partition. Finally, I drilled several tiny directional holes and even intervals for the water to drip out of the piping. I ensured the water can directionally drip 3 different locations across the bed, top, middle, and bottom, as that's how I usually plant the crops. This year, I planted varying types of lettuces, bok choy, 3 different kinds of peppers, tomato, cucumber, squash, and lastly my favorite, sesame leaves. Thank you for watching and please subscribe for more Imagine It.